Hello again, traders, and welcome back to the weekly stocks outlook for the week of September 24th, 2023. Hope you all are having an excellent weekend, getting some rest, and ready for another week of trading here. So really not a lot to go over here, just because we're getting a big dollar rally that's going to drive stocks lower. That makes it very unappealing to really buy any stocks, especially if you're buying them. The idea being that if stocks go up here, that some individual markets will perform well. But when we start seeing what we're seeing, you just really want to get out of the way. There may be some stocks sort of spread out that do well, or sort of even if the stock market goes lower, can kind of bounce. But it just doesn't open up a very appealing period for when you really want to get exposure to the equity market when everything's going up. You can find those really choice opportunities. And then really have a lot of support as things move. And so, when we look at the S&P 500, well, we can see from last Friday we closed lower. And really early on in the week, you could tell that things were really not shaping up very good at all here, right? So that predicted moving averages stretched lower. We saw dollar just not really doing much of anything except, maintaining its strength. When we look at dollar in this percent R, aspect here, I mean, this is just a ton of momentum, and from the VantagePoint side of this, you're still in uptrend, so there's really not much to speak to, right? I mean, if this is happening, then this isn't a period where you would want to load up stocks or equities. The same thing's happening to commodities, so things like wheat, where if we you go back a couple of weeks ago, there's some good levels down here on this trading day here. We go lower. We get these crossovers to the upside, but then again, when you start to see this earlier on in the week going on in even markets like wheat on the commodity side, you just see that something is really wrong with the market. It's just not the time to go in there and start, taking on big bets. Really the only way to make money is to take profits on shorts. In the context of dollar, that's potentially euro. Gold's been fairly weak, but it just feels like there's a lot of stocks that really have the potential to set up at much better prices, at much lower prices. So, it's really just not a great, really environment, I would say, for, doing a lot of trading here. You've really got a one-directional bet, a lot of volatility, sort of couched into that. And it's going to be very difficult to trade and pull money out of even, going long dollar or directly shorting the market. And like I said, it just seems like it'd be better to just let this market just sell off, get out of the way, and wait for really high quality opportunities to line up again. No telling exactly where those things might, start opening up. But that's the whole point about, running the process forward and taking what we can get and just taking it day by day here. So, one of the interesting things is, light sweet crude has held up fairly well here, but even in these conditions, like I said, you're gonna get this pressure on commodities. And so you see you've run pretty flat here. And what I found pretty interesting is when we come over and we look at, I don't have it open here, the RBOB market. So even this confusion as far as, light sweet crude's going up, energy's going up, even that is a mixed reality here, right? So sentiment bullish, but you're getting momentum. I mean, this is clearly not an uptrend. This is not accumulation from the electronic market accumulation index, and so we may see even crude start to roll over and show some weakness here. But it certainly, I mean, this is the period where it's like when you have dollar doing things like this, until you see something like this has to roll over, we have to get some signal that this is breaking down. And what'll happen is if dollar starts to break down, you'll end up seeing a bunch of individual stocks by running that stock scan that start to reverse to the bullish side, or have made a pullback recently and are showing accumulation and going to accelerate. But the scan would generally yield that when the time is right. And so it's just pretty basic here from the perspective of large trend reversals. You're going to really need to see that in dollar before we're going to see it in stocks and some of these other areas. So we've just had this situation of a lot of strength here. We had a good, June and July, and even, in August, things weren't that bad. But then the dollar has just really kicked off here. And, like I mentioned, you just don't want to get caught up on, the wrong side of this. And actually, if we look back, what's interesting with dollar, I mean, we have dollar now, this is now breaking out, right? So, I mean, we had the stock market much lower going back, earlier on in the year. And now we have a dollar that's, even picking up more steam from that point. So there's certainly the potential for stocks to really get hammered here. And so, it's going to set up, if anything, to the bearish side. But, you can see, here's a good example here just with the NASDAQ of why, specifically if we're looking at the markets today, right, going into the next week. It's like, where are we right now at this present moment? Well, the trend is clearly down, but sentiment's gotten bullish here. And then you've got a triple cross that's, pretty far off of where the market currently is. So the problem becomes is that your expected range becomes something like that. And that becomes very difficult for a short-term trader to deal with volatility-wise and not take on a lot of risk. If you've been shorting the market, you can, add to that position and keep exploiting that. But this is why volatility is really primed to be very extreme in these sort of situations. You already saw it last week with the market selling off. They could just as easily, bounce all the way to the triple and then sell off even more aggressively. And so this is just when you start having this level of short-term randomness accompanied with, what we'd expect is weakness, but a lot of short-term randomness when you're getting this far away from the triple. And we're starting to see a lot of these markets get pretty stretched. But certainly the longer-term direction here looks bearish. You see percent R down in this downtrending area on the NASDAQ. We can look at on the S&P, same thing. So what you have to be careful of, and this is where if the opportunity arises, you can take advantage of it. But coming out of the percent R area, creating a next day being the selling day. So if you end up getting sort of a weird spike in the beginning of the week, that can be the timing that helps you and say, okay, if you want to get that short position on, you're going to know what day that should occur in. But at this point, there's no way to know if that'd be come on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, could come a week from now. That particular type of opportunity opens up to get sort of broad-based exposure to the equity markets. But you really don't want to do that when you just had a sentiment level. You're up at your triple here, and so the expectation would be some sort of bounce here. And that would be much better to short, but we don't have any, information of even about that yet here. So we could even, just as easily just go lower. And so you only get the opportunity if it happens to present itself. And there's just no guarantee that sort of thing would even present itself this week. So it's just a really tricky week because, if you're trying to get short, you're chasing it. If you're trying to get long dollar, you're way behind this thing. We are starting to see some divergence, but this is just looks very, very strong here. So like I said, it's just you get out of the way and wait and be patient is how things would work for me. If you have totally different strategies and different technical approaches to things, well, different things might be opening up here. But it does seem that if you want to make money here, you're going to have to get on the short side somehow. Here's the gold market and again commodities where this is really susceptible to an aggressive sell-off. And so the thinking right now to me is like we're at September 24th. You've got one more week at least to this month and going into a new quarter. You've got things like gold, dollar starting to get primed, S&P, a lot of stocks that could sell off aggressively and may set up well. So, I mean, it kind of stands to reason that like this would be the week that you get a nasty, nasty sell-off and then you really next week want to be looking for potential opportunities and reversals, depending on the magnitude of maybe some weakness that we get into this week. Actually, I want to look at the calendar a little bit here. So we'll end the month on the 29th, and then we start up a new month literally next week, on Monday here. I tend to want to just think ahead and sort of think of, how things are likely to shift, what dates are on the calendar coming up. And that's just what I see is let this go lower. And gold's like a perfect example for all this, right? Of you have accumulation with no sentiment. So you've got a non-starter to go ahead and get you long. You need better opportunities than that. But when you get accumulation and you don't have sentiment, there is the likelihood that you get an aggressive push that then causes the sentiment to come in. And that would be more the opportunity that after a sell-off, after clearing these lows, where you'd find new opportunities, potentially in something here like gold, or potentially, stocks, equities, a lot of markets that, if dollar weakens, are going to do really well. But this is why you really want to stay really primed at this point to be running your scan, observing what's going on, even observing which markets are holding up better. Because when these markets start to reverse and that opportunity comes in to get those positions on, that's where things get really exciting. But if the bigger move ends up being to the upside, but it isn't a month from now, it's like you can either get short, but if you're getting short now with a short-term strategy, you need that long-term strategy that will also get you long later on. And so it really depends on what exactly are you doing. Are you going to play it entirely short-term and you're going to short it now and then try to get long later too? If your strategy is longer term in nature and you're looking for bigger positions, it gets you caught in a little sort of a bind here. It's funny because I keep thinking in my mind that like the word here is borked, and then I got really interested in the etymology of the word borked, on whether it's from the computer science term or an amalgamation of the word broken, or if it comes from Robert Bork from the 80s Senate confirmation, rejection. But it gets back to this: why is that word stuck? Because this market is really caught in a spot where you just don't get much edges here. And the next edge will come when there's a turn in dollar. And so it's like, why try to exploit dollar strength here when the bigger, better opportunity may be in that reversal that just hasn't come here yet? And that's going to, until it does, you're going to see stocks do poorly, commodities do poorly, dollar do well. And when the reversal comes is when you want to have that game plan ready of knowing exactly the types of opportunities you're looking for, and you get into the strongest things that benefit off of then dollar weakness. But when you have dollar strength, what happens? Most markets aren't going to perform all that well. So I'll just leave it there for today. Like I mentioned, there certainly may be some stock trades out there, but when you get this sort of like overhang from the macro picture, it's not worth making the play. It just isn't worth even trying to, keep something into the portfolio and push against this, because the reality is even if that opportunity that you have on going into the week makes money and it works out fine, the much better opportunities are usually on the horizon here, where the best thing is to stay patient, wait, and then you get obvious, I want to take this bet sort of opportunities but you need the volatility. It's almost like like a game where all the puzzle pieces or something sort of get stagnant and set into place, and it needs to be shaken up again. And that shaking up again is a great thing, because it then opens up all this newness and freshness and areas for exploiting other market participants out there. So this is where the volatility is great, because it gets people off their game, it gets things shifting, but it just seems like we're right on the cusp of a lot of it to shake things up here. So I've sort of been saying, be cautious here, be very careful. Some warnings here. This isn't like one of these periods where we're just coming in, buy this stock looks great, look at all this, it's a totally different feel of this now. And I think that, it's hard to pinpoint why you feel that. A lot of it comes from experience and just seeing, which markets and how they're getting set up. But that's sort of the point, with blackjack, poker, any game of chance and uncertainty here, you got to lean in when the odds are on your side. And when you see, again, just what dollar's doing here, the odds aren't on your side. Very likely they will be soon, where you can get some really good edges, but man, it is, borked right now. And so you want to be careful, preserve capital, so that, when those better times come and you can have that confidence, well, then great. That's exactly what, you're trying to do is keep your bags safe and protected, and then, get your money in good when those odds are shifting on your side here. So I'll leave it there. Again, not a lot of like nitty gritty charts to go through and all this, because again, it's just a big macro crunch here of dollar, and you want to get a good read on it before you start making any sort of moves out there in the marketplace. So have a great rest of your week. Stay safe. Thanks again, and bye for now.